Hi, my name is Mark Seelinger, and I'm here to tell you about wetlands. I'm a professional wetland scientist, and I am also the director of the Swamp School. So let's get started learning. First, we will learn what a wetland is, or a definition of a wetland. We will also have to cover some of the wetland terminology, and then we'll talk about why wetlands are so important to us. Or in other words, we'll learn about the benefits of wetlands. So, what is a wetland? It can be defined a number of ways, like a transitional zone between water and dry land. But it's basically an area where water, also known as hydrology, covers the soil, either all of the time or part of the time. And because of this, the soil, which is also called hydric soil, and the types of plants called hydrophytes, and animal communities that are found in a wetland are unique. So, let's cover some of the important vocabulary concerned with a wetland education. The first definitions come from the last slide, and they are hydrology and hydric soil, and hydrophytes. First, let's talk about hydrology. Hydro is water, and ology is the science of. So, hydrology is the science of water. It's basically following water from rain to evaporation and back again. Next, we have the term hydric soil. This is the soil that is formed when it is covered with water long enough to develop anaerobic conditions. And because of this, important chemical reactions take place in hydric soils. Think of the word anaerobic as the opposite of aerobic. It's when the soil doesn't contain any oxygen. Thirdly is the term for wetland plants, which is hydrophytic. Again, hydro means water, and phytic refers to plants. So hydrophytic is another word for water plant. These plants can survive, and they actually thrive in hydric soil. Next, let's talk about the definition of watershed. A watershed is a land between places where water flows from hills to valleys and end up in the ocean. It's the drainage area of water into larger bodies of water like lakes and rivers, which eventually drain into the ocean. And last, I'd like to define an upland. This term sounds like it should have an opposite called a downland, but it doesn't. An upland is basically not a wetland. Easy enough, right? So, let's get on with the learning. Let's talk a little bit about the history of wetlands before we talk about the benefits. Believe it or not, people used to think that wetlands were wasted land. They saw wetlands as breeding grounds for scary animals like snakes and crocodiles, and worst of all, the dreaded mosquito. Mosquitoes were believed to have no other purpose than to spread disease. So people drained the land to make farms, neighborhoods, roads, factories, and even parking lots. People in the past drained so many of the existing wetlands that over half of them have been lost and converted to other uses. And the other bad thing is that while we are still losing wetland acres to the tune of about 60,000 acres per year across the entire United States. Most of this is current drainage is for farming uses, but we are also using our existing wetlands for development of houses, roads, stores, etc. We didn't realize the benefits of wetlands until recently, so let's talk about these next. Wetlands are often called the nurseries of life. They are such biologically productive ecosystems that they are compared to rainforests and coral reefs. They provide habitat from everything from water lilies, turtles, frogs, snakes, alligators, crocodiles, and many types of waterfowl, fish, and mammals. Migrating birds use wetlands on their cross-country journey to rest and feed. Many animal and plant extinctions can be tied directly to the filling of wetland habitats. Wetlands also protect our land from flooding and high winds during severe storm events. They function like natural tubs or sponges that store water and then release it slowly into the environment. The soils and vegetation slow the water down and absorb excess water, so the damage from the large amounts of rushing water characteristics of flooding is reduced, if not entirely eliminated. The vegetation helps slow heavy winds that could otherwise damage many structures surrounding them. This saves a lot of property damage, reduces erosion, and reduces the loss of life from flooding events. Another benefit of the sponge-like characteristics of wetlands is the filtering of water before it reaches our rivers, lakes, and streams. As the water from the upland drains toward a wetland, the wetland absorbs the pollutants, say from fertilizers, because they stick to the soil particles. So you can add to the benefits of a wetland that it cleans our waters. Lastly, the aesthetic value or beauty of wetlands is another benefit we can add to our list. Without wetlands, where could we see such a variety of special plants and animals? Things that we do in our pastimes, like canoeing down a river, bird watching in the trees, hiking in the wilderness, fishing in the lakes and streams, would not be possible without the wetlands. Theodore Roosevelt said, "The nation behaves well if it treats the natural resources as assets which it must turn over to the next generation, increased and not impaired in value." This was back in 1907, and his thought is true of our wetlands. Right now, the United States has a no net loss policy for wetland acreage. So if an individual or company wants to build on a wetland property, they have to either develop a new wetland somewhere else of equal size and value, or improve the existing wetland that may be suffering from neglect. In other words, they have to pay back the loss to the next generation. So the generation of youngsters coming of age in the near future and beyond can benefit from wetlands as they were intended by nature. Wetlands are unique, just like you and me.